UFO, by the way, were actually recorded in 2004. They were recorded quite a few years ago, and they had been kept in the archives and just recently released by someone, and Luis Elizondo from this To the Stars Academy program that Tom DeLonge, the rock star, has started, was the one touting these as proof of extraterrestrial craft. They have not gone to the step beyond that to actually say who the heck is piloting these vehicles, if they are extraterrestrial. But it was a historic event on December 16th of last year when the New York Times actually interviewed the Department of Defense officials and the Pentagon officials who confirmed the existence of extraterrestrial vehicles. That is a huge history-making event that we all seem to be alive to hear.
Well, but what I found so interesting right after that, and I think I've told you this before, you had the Secretary of the Air Force just come out, he was giving a little speech and, to Academy and said that the next war will not be a ground war. It won't be a world war. It'll be a war in space. Now, you can take that so many different ways, but just it seemed it was so funny. You have the release of the video of the two pilots, and then all of a sudden you hear the Secretary of the Air Force coming out and saying that. It just doesn't compute in my mind. I mean, are they trying to prepare the American people that they maybe are UFOs, and maybe, and just maybe, the way it sounds like, they might not be, the most friendly people in the world.
Yeah, they are couching their terms very close to the vest in how they're trying to disclose this information. And you're right, that disclosure by the secretary there was made to the cadets themselves as they were going through the program there at the Air Force Academy. And they're telling the young pilots, the young people in the service, that get ready, this is going to be our next venture, is to go into space and compete with or defend against whatever enemy is out there.
Well,
matter of fact, when go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, then you have our president all of a sudden starts talking about we need to create another military branch, and that is one to protect Earth. The Space Force. I mean, all of a sudden he comes up. I mean, you put all these things together, and it's kind of strange.
Exactly. Just think of the timing of this. I mean, President Trump creates what he calls the Space Force, not the Air Force, not the Army Air Force, the Space Force, which, of course, ufologists out there have said, well, my gosh, we've got a secret space program, and we have for many, many years, so this may be just a PR kind of thing that they're doing at this point. But the fact that they're actually coming out in public now and confirming, number one, the existence of extraterrestrial vehicles, and then that we need to create our own Space Force for some reason, kind of lends you to believe that there's maybe something ominous about this situation that they are trying to prepare themselves and then the public for.
Well, as long as it's not another war of the worlds, but maybe the real version, Yeah, it's you never know. Of course, there are then Dr. Stephen Greer out there who says, hey, there's nothing to worry about this thing. These people in the military just need an excuse to be able to get more funding, and they're calling this an extraterrestrial threat. And so many people have the other thought that, hey, if they were an extraterrestrial threat, they could have destroyed us many, many years ago.
many times over. If they were going to do that. So
maybe not.
Who knows?
I mean, you could go back many, many years ago and say the same thing. Well, many, many years before that, they could have. Maybe it's come to a point where maybe, we've had contact with them, and maybe they don't like us, and maybe the government or the other government. I don't want to get into conspiracy here. Maybe realizes there is a threat. And that's why they're talking about it. And Stephen Greer, I listen to him a lot. And sometimes I wonder if he's out there debunking stuff, because some of his stuff he says is so far out there. And it's just, that's what they do. I mean, that's the point. They got people, that's what they do, is debunk. So when they do come out with something, they want to keep you confused. The same way when you take somebody to court, you don't want the other opposition to know what you're doing. I mean, you want to keep them confused to a certain point till they actually realize what you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. There is this there are these competing theories and different personalities in the field of ufology that seem to be confusing the entire field. Of course, the famous ufologist Grant Cameron from Canada states that this is exactly what the government does. They put disinformation together by promoting different points of view on the same subject to keep the public from organizing and understanding really what's going on. They keep them busy with trying to fight amongst themselves and not understand what the real truths are. You've got to be very discerning nowadays.
It's very good propaganda. I mean, the Nazis discovered how to propaganda, their population like you wouldn't believe. We've come a long way since then. But, I will say this. I had a friend, and I'm going back into the 80s now, Republic Airlines. Okay, he was one of, they were a big airline at one time before they disappeared. He was one of the vice presidents of Republic Airlines. I don't remember what part, but during Vietnam, he used to from Guam fly B-52s and drop, the eggs in North Vietnam and wherever. And he said on two occasions, because he served, I think, 2 or 3 tours over there flying, that he spotted a UFO. And the first time he radioed in, to command, they saw a unidentified object off to his wing. Okay, by the time he landed, here's these guys in their suits. He is separated from his crew. Him and the co-pilot, they're all separated, right? And they are being told. This is his story. He told me they were being told they didn't see anything. They forgot everything they did see. And if they didn't forget, he would no longer have a military career or maybe a family to go back to. And that kind of had him concerned. But what also is interesting, since he was a and he was into UFOs, since he was a vice president of a large airline, back then, that he saw reports and heard reports of pilots occasionally would be doing their route, not sleeping. That's another story. But sometimes they would take naps and, they let the computer fly the plane, especially on long routes like to Japan. That's another story. But he would get reports in that they would see UFOs. And again, if they wanted to have a career as a pilot working for any type of airline, they better forget about it, and not even make a report, because if they made official report, that was the end of their career. Yeah,
exactly. As a matter of fact, there is a very famous story in that regard. Dr. Richard Haynes, NASA retired, is a scientific consultant for the UFO I-Team. He's a very wonderful scientist, living on Whidbey Island, by the way. He's a local fella in his retirement.
Oh, Whidbey Island's nice. I grew up there.
Oh, there you go, of course.
Oh, yeah, up to about 5 or 6 years old, but my family was there.
Oh, you must have been pioneers back in that time. That's for sure. That would have been a wonderful time to live there.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't a lot of people. And they were actually doing logging yet at that time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Dr. Haynes actually has an organization called NARCAP that actually gathers the pilot reports from around the world, military, commercial, private pilots, because indeed they don't want to report anything and add their name to it. So Dr. Haynes' organization takes their reports totally anonymously. And he has what he calls his air catalog of all the UFO reports that have been sent into NARCAP over the years. You can find him on the internet if you'd like. And there's a famous story about Dr. Haynes actually saving a pilot's career after he sighted a massive UFO over Alaska. This was the Japanese Airlines, and it was pilot, his last name is Terahuchi, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, I'm sorry, but it's Terahuchi basically is what it looks like. He was flying over Alaska at the time and spotted a large cylinder and kind of round-shaped object in front of his airplane, his commercial jet, that filled up the entire windscreen of his airline. He says it was as large. His indication was it was about as large as an aircraft carrier, and it was kind of pacing his jet at the time for quite a few miles. As a matter of fact, what he did is he just got permission to be able to make an evasive action and turn to the right to make sure he didn't come into this and collide with this object. And what happens was he made an entire slow circle to the right, and this object followed him off of his left wing around the entire circle. And when he came straight back onto his course, this thing flew off in a flash and it was gone. When he made that report, when he actually before he landed, he was telling the traffic controllers that this was going on. Back in Japan, he was grounded. They actually grounded him at Japan Airlines for making this report. Dr. Haynes found out about his situation, and he is a world traveler, so he actually went to Japan and discussed with the Japanese FAA officials that, hey, this happens all the time. Your pilot did exactly what he was supposed to do during a report of this kind, and you shouldn't punish him for doing a good job and making sure that his craft and crew were safe during the whole event. They reinstated Captain Terahuchi because of Dr. Haynes's testimony on the sighting case. So these things happen many more times than we know about because only a few percentage of these reports are actually reported to NARCAP.
Oh, yeah. And he was really lucky, too, because, from what my friend told me, that, a lot of times if they did open their mouth, the company or the FAA would make him go to a psychiatrist for a period of time just for they could keep their license. And, and if and put it this way, if you rub somebody wrong, what can happen when you go to a psychiatrist. Every psychiatrist is going to have a different opinion. So if you got one that somebody is, they're working for the government, you don't know what opinion they're going to have when it comes to your pilot license.
Oh, yeah. Now, that would be a scary proposition to have to appear in front of a military-sponsored psychiatrist.
Now, it's one thing I do want to say. I was reading, because I'm looking at you, too. Boy, you got a beard like me. People might be having a hard time hearing me going through your setup, but they can listen to your show live starting at about 8 o'clock at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. That's www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. They can listen to this show today, tomorrow, next week. They can listen to it 4 or 5 times if they want. Also, they can listen to it on Spreaker Radio, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and, oh boy, just a ton of other different apps. Now I'm back to you.
Yes,